I'm Matt.
Hey, I'm Steve.
Hey, I'm John.
This is the Sober Friends Podcast. We're here for the sober curious, the new guy, and the old timer. We're here to talk about the stuff anyone looking to live alcohol-free has to face day to day, and how we overcame those struggles. We speak for no 12-step group, but we do try to remain anonymous. You're not alone. This is the Sober Friends Podcast. When you got somebody doing the show who has ADHD, I think of things even when I hit the button. But John sent me a text that our two-time former guest, Kelly Giannuzzi, by the time this airs, will have 3 years sober.
Nice.
When we first met her, she was sober, I think, 6 months.
Yeah.
Or something like that. She was a brand newbie. So, Kelly, congratulations. It can be done. You can get sober and you can have a great life. You can also deal with feelings. And I had a discussion with my son. So my son got me all worked up today about the house being messy. I'm like, yeah, it is messy. And he's talking about the girls being slobs. I'm like, yeah, they are a slob. And once he got going, I got going. And I was all worked up by the time my wife came in the house with the dogs, and we're both yelling at her. And the root cause here is really it was about how he felt. And it was more than it being messy. He talked about the fact that I don't have a big extended family. And the family members that we have, there are a lot of flaws with them. And so it was really had this conversation around, I'm just not comfortable with big feelings. And I talked to him a little bit about how this is what we do at 12-step meetings. Is we talk about this stuff and our feelings. I thought that would be a great topic. It's still something I haven't mastered. How do you deal with your feelings? How do you let go of that stuff? What's your thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you, it's a great topic for those of us with addiction issues because we talk about it here all the time.
Yep.
I talk about it. You talk about it. Is that the use of my use or misuse of alcohol was not the problem, but a symptom of the problem. And the problem for me was, and lots of alcoholics, is that we got stuck in our feelings. We didn't know how to handle them. We didn't know what to do with them. We didn't know how to best work with them. And for those of us with this problem, we found that alcohol seemed to help us with that. I mean, it was a lie. And that's not even true. It probably worked at first, right? It probably worked when you could do it responsibly, but it's a lie that it's going to be able to help you. And it's hard. It's hard for everybody, right? It's hard for a lot of people dealing with your feelings and especially big feelings. And it's like everything else. It takes some practice, right, to do that. It takes some practice and it takes some tools. And like you said, it's what we do in AA. We do both of those things. We practice how to do it, and we have some tools how to do it. And like you said, we don't do it perfectly right now, right? I mean, just recently, there's some stuff that I'm dealing with, and I have not dealt with it perfectly, and would wish I had dealt with a lot of it differently. But I'm where I'm at in life, I don't beat myself over it too much, but I do try to do better, which is what I always try to do.
I have a new job. The new job is tailored to my skill set. I have bitched and moaned on this podcast for probably a few years now about things around the job and ebbs and flows of stress. And I'm in a place where things are far different. I'm doing strategy, and it's much different workflow. I'm not moving widgets anymore.
Right.
Now I'm creating a strategy for the people who do move the widgets, and it's different. And I realized last night I had grade A anxiety over this new job. And I realized it was around, I'm going to fail. I'm not going to be good at this. There are a lot of people I've met who seem to like me, and somehow I'm going to disappoint them. Because of being in a 12-step program and being in therapy, I realized immediately, this is not real, nor is it logical. It's not rational. It doesn't stop the fact that I feel this. And I was able to talk to my wife about it when I got home. Hey, I'm feeling this way. I am really feeling stressed about the job. I have no reason to feel this way, but my character defects are coming up of perfectionism. And it's come up. I've done some work where I felt like, oh, I could do that better. And there are people I work with who are like, wow, that was really great.
It's easy. I get anxious over work too. I mean, it's a little different for me. I'm at the tail end of my career, and it's interesting. We just had a meeting last week where they want to reboot the company so much. The company is a very small company, and I always think they're going to shut the company down. And it's very much struggling, and that could happen. And but so I decided. My wife and I have been saying, she's like, oh, you need to retire. You need to do some volunteer work. You need to do some stuff to keep you busier. And I'd like, well, maybe I should just work more, right? I mean it. Like I work semi-retired. Like maybe I should put a little bit more effort into my job because I want to keep working for another year. And anyway, we get on this call, and I have what they call imposter syndrome, right?
Me
I
too.
always think that, right. We talk about that. And I get on this call and we start talking about it. And it comes out on this call, and we're going to have these calls once a week. And I've taken a lead role in this stuff. I'm going to really try to, because I have 30 years experience in this industry. But what I come to find out is that the two accounts that I handle more than that, but my two best accounts are the two accounts that really have been keeping the company afloat. And it's like, oh, so that's why I still have my job, right? Like my accounts are performing, Yep. And I do realize that they're small, they're not big accounts. So I realize, like, if those are the two accounts that are really only performing regularly, then I realize that we're in trouble. So anyway, so it's just interesting. You have this anxiety over it. Every time my boss would reach out to me, I would think, oh, here it comes. He's going to tell me that he's going to let me go. He's going to fire, whatever the words you might say. And I'm always thinking that, but yet, my accounts are the ones performing, So, and so anyway, so it's always like that. That anxiety is really, really tough. Those feelings are tough. I had a thing. One of the things I've decided to do, and this is just in the last week or something. I've decided that when something's bothering me, and maybe this is something that a lot of people do easily. I don't do it easily. Is I'm going to talk about it. So if my wife says something to me that bothers me, it may seem small, but I'm going to bring it up and discuss it with her. I'm going to like, hey, that bothers me, right? I don't like the way you just said that, because what I've done, my MO has always been is not to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then like your example that your son, it was really interesting because what I heard you say about your son is that he was complaining about the house being messy, yet what was really the problem was something bigger, right?
Yeah.
The lack of family, right? I think it's human. That happens to a lot of us, right? So the same thing happens all of a sudden. I don't deal with all these little things, these little slights, whatever they may be, and they build up, and then all of a sudden my wife says something, I blow up. She can't figure out why I'm blowing up because it's just a small little thing. So I've taken a new tack, like I don't want to do that anymore, so I'm going to let you know. Now, sometimes those conversations are uncomfortable. We just had one the other day, and she's like, oh, I think that's just minutia, and I said, I'm just telling you. This is one of the things that just chips away, and then all of a sudden I blow up, and I don't want to do that anymore, right? I don't want to be there. I don't want to live that way. So, listen, we all can change these things, but it takes work, it takes effort, and it takes some skill.
So how have 12 steps worked with this? What's worked for you? What have you learned from recovery around this type of thing?
I mean, the biggest thing I've learned is to look inward, right? It really is, right? It's to look at me, not look at the other person. And that's what I mean. So my wife may be right. Some of this stuff may be minutia. In other relationships and stuff, things may not even register, but they bother me. So I gotta look inward. And the same thing. So when we get into these blow-ups, which don't happen as often, like I always have to look at me. I was at my Friday night meeting, and one of the guys there, one of our boys, Todd, said he shared that he got into this discussion or argument with his wife, and he never screamed at her. And I said, something, I wish I was there, like, because I just had an argument with my wife, and I did scream at her. I'm like, I'm not there, right? At least at that point, I wasn't. So I need to always look inward and like, all right, what's going on? And I do. I'm looking inward. I've got some books. I'm reading some books on meditation and stuff like that. So there's some things I need to change or add to my life, which I think will be very helpful. And, but again, that takes work. It takes effort. It takes discipline. Sometimes I'm not real good with some of those things, and I just keep trying.
Discipline.
Yeah,
I'm not good at that. It's funny you said that about the book. I have an Audible subscription that I don't ever really do anything, so I just let everything build up, and I finally got a notice that said, "Hey, you're going to lose a couple of credits here." So one of the books I got was 10% Happier with Dan Harris. I had been doing a little research into Dan Harris, and I looked and I'm like, you know what? This is one of those things that I think can help me. The other book that I got by Susan Cain is called Quiet. It's around introversion and introverts in the workplace, which is very challenging for me in the workplace. In one way, working from home and being on MS Teams all day is the introvert's dream. On the other hand, there's so many introverts in leadership or extroverts in leadership that it's very challenging. And I don't want to have call after call after call after call with people I don't know, especially in a new role, and it freaks me out. But somebody mentioned that book, so I'm going to do that. And it's funny you mentioned that about the books. Books are another things. I think when your wife said this is minutia, this is part of your wife not understanding addiction. It's not minutia. On the surface, if you're really bothered about the small stuff, yeah, that's minutia. But the small stuff is the tip of the iceberg. And so you got to talk to somebody and say, okay, you're really upset about this topic. What are the feelings associated with this? And dig it out. That's what I've learned in meetings.
Right. And that's what I try to do. First of all, I have to do that with myself, right? So I have to discuss it with somebody, or even in this case, discuss it with my wife. But I sort of need to put myself, because this is what happened. Like the event happened one night, we were having dinner, and I took a couple days. Like I didn't address it right away, right? So I took 2 or 3 days to sort of do a little work, internal work on myself, like, okay, what's going on? What am I feeling? What bothers me about this is, and then finally I just went in and said, hey, I just want to talk about that, and here's how I feel about it. And it was really good that when I did it. It was right. It was a discussion. It wasn't a big deal. There weren't a lot of feelings at that point. She paid attention. She stopped looking at her phone. We had a little conversation, and she's like, all right. Probably didn't agree with it, but acknowledged it, and that's all I want, right? That's all I want.
Not even about agreeing or disagreeing.
Right.
It's empathy. Listen.
Right. And she did all of those things. Mm-hmm. She did all of those things, and I noticed them, and she looked at me, and we had this conversation, and it wasn't even a conversation. It was she listened to me, and that was really important, and it was, it was a big thing for me, and I just want to shout out on a book that I have, and I've been going through it kind of slowly. There's a book out there called Already Free, and the subtitle is Buddhism Meets Psychotherapy on the Path of Liberation. And it talks about this guy who's a psychotherapist. He's a therapist, and he's also a Buddhist. And he talked about how he uses those two things in order to point out, a little bit of the Buddhist stuff where we're already free. And in a summary, basically, a lot of that stuff is things aren't good or bad; they just are, right? That's sort of the Buddhist thought. Things aren't good or bad; they just are.
That's also Taoism,
right? Yeah. And so, and I read this, and there's a lot of things in this book that I'm like, they make a lot of sense to me. And this is going to be one of those books that I'm going to constantly read, right? So I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to go reread it, and then. So there's some really good things in there and suggestions of how, it talks about exactly what we're talking about. You get in these places where you have these feelings, you're feeling sad, or you're feeling uptight, or you're feeling worried, and how you start dealing with some of those things. And so there are a lot of books out there, right? And we talk about it all the time, and our AA program tells us that doesn't have all the answers. And it tells us, go try to find some of these answers elsewhere.
Therapy works.
Yeah.
I had a good therapy session a couple weeks ago where I was honest about a bunch of things. So my issue is I put this protective cocoon over me in a lot of situations, and I can be standoffish with people I don't know. And this is where alcohol came in, that I could feel more, I could be more of myself if I have alcohol. Let the inhibitions down. But without alcohol, that walnut shell goes up, and I've worked really hard on it, but it's still there. I have not cried over my mother passing in 2018. It is very difficult for me to let the feelings out and to cry. It's like a reflex of hold it together. And I've got to figure out what's at root of this. So what I'm being good about is I have this protective shell and I don't know how to fix it, but I can take it a step at a time.
Yeah. And that's all we can do, right? I mean, that's all we should do. Life is challenging. Lots of things, especially, at your point in life, young family, right? You got a lot of stuff. You got your work stuff you're trying to balance. I remember those years. My wife and I have talked about that. She used to, complain that her kids wouldn't return her text messages or phone messages back in the day. And I just remember saying to her, honey, do you remember when you had two kids that were 2 and 4? It's like, it's like, or even now that they're older, now that you're running around to different functions, it's like they're busy. Like their lives they're busy and they got a lot going on. So yeah, there's a lot going on, and we just have to take it one step. We really have to take it slow. Unless we feel like there's something big that's really threatening to our relationships, our marriage. Like there are times to, pull the fire alarm and get really help if you need it. So that's the other thing. If you really feel like things are moving really too fast and you really need help, then it's time to pull that alarm and get yourself some help.
That's definitely something you should do. Take it from me. I get help.
Yep.
I go to a therapist now, and I'm trying to work on these things. I had a skip level with my director today, and she's very chatty. And I found out today she's an introvert. And at first I was like, that can't be possible. Oh, yeah, it is.
Right.
Because she tends to talk to fill up the dead space.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of an introvert thing. I don't know how comfortable she is with silence, but she tries to do hard things. And it was a reminder to me that this person who is 2 pay grades above me has some of the same problems I have.
Yeah, I mean, that's another part of our program, is that we start to realize that we're not unique with this stuff, right? We're not unique with our addiction, our disease, and we're also not unique with our feelings. And that's the beautiful thing about going to meetings. Like you said, you told your son, that's what we do. And sometimes what that means is that we just listen to other people and we realize, oh yeah, they're struggling too, right? I mean, yeah, they're struggling with life too. And we also hear like, oh shit, I'm glad that's not my life I'm dealing with there, like that, right? So there's so much we hear about that, and it's so much, it gives us comfort and support, and we're able also to have some gratitude sometimes, thinking, I actually have it pretty good. I had my annual wellness check, they call it now. They used to call it a physical. Now they call it the annual wellness check. And I went to my doctor, and I have good genetics. So I don't take any meds, right? No high blood pressure, no nothing. I don't take any meds. And, my doctor said to me, like, hey, anything you want to talk about, any problems? And I told him, like, the only problem I have, Doc, is like accepting the fact that I'm 65 years old, right? Mm-hmm. And all the stuff that comes with that. Right. So even that, I gotta, those are some of the feelings that I'm going through right now. It's like, yeah, I can't do everything that I want to do, and I have to adjust some of the things. And there's maybe a little bit regret in there that I didn't do some things that I should have done when I was younger. Those are all feelings that I need to sort of come to terms with, and I need to constantly, and I need to watch out for them. I mean, I don't know what it is, but lately, and I don't think about drinking, but it's like it seems like it's been in front of me more than noticeable. And I don't know what it is, but those are the things I got to start paying attention to. Like, I have to pay attention to all of those feelings, because it's a very short trip for me and for a real alcoholic or real addict to take that next step and all of a sudden allow some of these feelings to build up or just make that mistake. Like we always hear it. Like I was driving down the street and I just turned into the package store and I picked up a bottle, right? How many times do you hear that? So I'm always on guard for that. And it's really interesting. I read this article about mezcal, right? And how it's produced. And apparently it's become this big thing. And I was a big tequila drinker, and I drank my share of mezcal during the day. But I read this whole article in the Washington Post. They were talking about how some of the best mezcal is made by wild plants, not the cultivated plants. And and it takes like 30 to 50 years for agave plant to mature. So these plants they're being searched for the wild, and they're going to lose them. But anyway, and then I pick up this book. I'm start reading this book about a Yellowstone park ranger. I just picked it up from the library the other day. And in it, what do I read? He's drinking mezcal. And I'm just like, what a coincidence that is. Like, I just read this whole thing, and now this character in the book. Maybe in the past I wouldn't have noticed those things. In the past I probably wouldn't have read that article. But like those things, I pay attention to that nowadays because I got to be careful with that, especially when I'm feeling certain feelings or big feelings or feeling down or depressed or lonely, right? That whole thing, the halt. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired, right? If I'm feeling those things, I got to, those are all feelings except for hungry. Hungry is a feeling, but it's a physical feeling.
It leads to other feelings.
Right.
If you're hungry. And, that's a bad place for me.
I always have to be aware of those things. Some of those sayings are funny and some of them are stupid. Some people may think, but for me, I find them to be useful. When I'm those things, I'm like, okay, I got to pay attention to this.
I struggle with other people's feelings. So my son being upset, I do not like that storm. The fact that first he got me upset, then realizing what's going on, I don't like that turmoil. I don't like that conflict. I like peace and serenity. And when people's feelings are up in the air, it's very uncomfortable for me.
Yeah. Especially the people close to us, right? I
right.
mean that. Like your kids, especially. None of us want to see our kids have these feelings and struggle with these feelings, right? It's a worrisome thing. Or our partner, our wife, our husbands, whoever it may be. Most of us don't want those things. I know that if my wife is very upset and have all these feelings going on, whether they're part of something that we did or not, it makes me uncomfortable too. It makes me, right? I mean, these are people we care about. These are people we love. So it's really, really important that, we have some communication with everybody.
I want to share, as we wrap this up, a victory that I had this week. Because I'm working a little bit later. I was getting to work at 7 before. So getting to the gym at 3:30 it worked. But getting off work at 5 now doesn't work. So I wasn't going to the gym during the week. And I also saw that at work, if I get to the gym 120 times this year, they'll pay up to $150 of my gym membership. And I have been struggling to get up early enough to go to the gym, and I made it 2 days this week. So I started to build a new habit, and lo and behold, I felt better. I felt a lot better. Now, I gave myself permission today to sleep in. I was tired, and if I start this habit of going to the gym every single day just because I don't want to break the habit, that's not good either, because I know I'm going to go on Sunday and Saturday. It did feel good, though, and I broke a habit, and I felt better. So I took a day off today. I will go tomorrow. And I will get even a small workout in. This goes into our topic here, too, of I can go for 10 minutes because that's better than nothing.
Right.
Incrementalism.
Absolutely. And it's nice to be able to do that. And I've always liked working out in the morning when I could. And there was a time where I did. I would get up early and I'd go and work out. And I've always for me, that was the best time. I always liked it way better than working out after work. So, and it's nice. And just like you said, if you go twice a week and then go on both days on a weekend, that's 4 times a week, man.
Yep.
The truth is that's all you need to do. Right? Now if you make it 3 times in a week, that's fine. But if you go twice a week, and then the other days you sleep in, or 3 times and you sleep in 2 days, that's more than enough. I mean, that's But again, being alcoholic, sometimes we think that we got to do it all or nothing.
Yes,
right?
the all or nothing thing comes in, and I have changed why I'm doing this too. There's a couple. I had a doctor's appointment. We're getting in the health stuff, but this is part of it too because I'm taking care of myself. I had the colonoscopy. What is it called? The colonoscopy pre-meeting, where he wanted to see me before he scheduled the colonoscopy. The consult.
Yeah.
But these are the things I'm doing to take care of myself. I want to take care of my colon because that has in the past been the second highest killer of men. And I want to get good exercise in because if I want to be spry at 80 years old, I got to do the physical fitness now. Studies say if you're physically fit earlier in your life, when you reach 80, you're going to be in good shape. I don't want to be an invalid. And I want my insides to be ticking well. So I'm doing the exercise now without the thoughts of how the outside's going to look.
Yeah. And I think that, again, it is the health thing, but it's about doing a well-balanced, having a somewhat of a well-balanced life. And it's one of the things they asked me, it's my first time I've been for this physical and since I've been on Medicare, and they go through a bunch of questions. Do you eat healthy? Do you exercise? And I can answer like yes for the most part to all of those, right? I mean, I walk every day. I'm not always at the gym, but I mean, I've been walking 4 or 5, 6 miles a day with the dog for the last 6 months. Matter of fact, the dog started getting skinny, and it wasn't until my buddy Mike told me, "Hey, Winnie, are you losing weight?" And I looked at him like, she is thin. And it turned out she had lost a couple pounds when she went to her next visit because she was all of a sudden, I'm walking, so she's walking. So we had to up her food. But it's important for those things because those things also help you when it comes to feeling, which comes to stress, right? So that exercise, although it may sound like it's a different thing, they actually work. It actually works to help you deal with some of the stuff. Some of the, so that you're not so uptight, you're not so anxious. It gives you endorphins. It gives you all of these things that you need in order to have a healthier physical and mental body, so that you can, be a participant in life and take on some of life's harder stuff.
We'd like to hear what you have to say. You can find me, Matt, at SoberFriendsPod.com. You can link right to the website, SoberFriendsPod.com, where you can join our mailing list and see what we're up to. Give us a follow at Instagram at SoberFriendsPod.com, and we'd love to have your feedback on Apple, getting 5 stars. It helps know what we're doing well. Steve, good to break open the feelings with you tonight.
All right, Matt. Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody. You made it this far into the podcast. That tells me you're a pretty big fan. If you like what we do and you find value in the podcast, consider a donation at buymeacoffee.com/SoberFriendsPod. Your donation keeps us on the air to help out the new guy and helps us defray some of our costs. If you find value in our podcast, please consider a donation at buymeacoffee.com/SoberFriendsPod.